Good morning. Welcome to the July Tidbits of History. Our guest this morning is Mike Jones, and we're pleased to have him here. Before we begin, I'd like to make some little housekeeping comments and announcements. If you have your cell phones, if you would please turn them off or put them on vibrate. They're very distracting when they go off. Look, even Mike is doing it. And if you would please hold your questions and comments until Mike is finished. I also want to remind you that we have some summer programs going on besides Tidbits of History. We have last month in June, Armagene did the beginning genealogy workshop. We had 51 in attendance. And on July 21st, if you pick up one of these sheets, we have our second workshop, which is organizing and preserving records. And of course, in August, on the 18th, Armagene will be teaching again the electronic resources. And if you'll pick up one of these sheets, you can see what's going on through the end of the year. We have some excellent speakers coming up. Also, we have been given these by our programming department. If you're pleased with the program, would you make a comment? They're sitting on the back table. And we have a little business card holder that you can put on your refrigerator if you think you need to call the library sometimes, our library. You're welcome to those. Now, Mike is retired from the American Press. He still works part-time for them. He is the editor of the Our Past column, which I'm sure all of you read. He's written a lot of local history articles, and he's very knowledgeable about so many topics that we're pleased to have him here today to speak about the German prisoners of war in Calcasieu Parish during World War II.
Okay, well, thanks for having me here today. This is a topic that I found very interesting. Without realizing it at first, this is basically, what my father did in World War II. He was a camp guard, of course not a prisoner, but one of the American soldiers guarding the prisoners. So, and he never really told me much about it. So, just researching the topic and writing about it has gotten me to, given me a lot more knowledge about, how my father spent World War II. But anyway, I thought, first of all, I wanted to dedicate the program to the memory of my father and all other deceased World War II veterans. And I also wanted to recognize any World War II veterans that might be in the audience today. Do we have any here? Just raise your hand. No World War II veterans? Well, anyway, they're fast leaving us, so, hope we can capture their memories before they go, because, I know, like my father, he didn't do anything big in the war, but, it's interesting. There were a lot of prisoners of war. But I thought what I'd do is give you some just kind of general information about prisoners of war in general, and then localize it to the state of Louisiana, and then here in Lake Charles. There were 358,000 prisoners of war incarcerated in the United States between 1941 and 1945. Those included 306,000 Germans, 50,000 Italians, and 2,800 Japanese. I guess it's not surprising that there would be so few Japanese prisoners, since they were known for fighting to the death. They just rarely surrendered. They were usually captured either by, they were wounded and couldn't do anything, kill themselves, or kill the Americans and fight to the last. So there were only 2,800 Japanese prisoners out of all the, I guess, thousands or millions that our armed forces fought during the war that were held prisoner. And that's one thing my father did do. He guarded Japanese prisoners on Angel Island in San Francisco Bay. And, the only thing he told me about it was they were Japanese Marines, and I guess he probably didn't know how they got captured. Those are probably some of the least likely to get captured. They would usually go fighting to the death. But anyway, he said they were very scary looking, but, on the whole, they were very docile and really didn't give them any trouble. But anyway, the first prisoner of war captured during the war was on December 7th, 1941 at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. And it was Ensign Kazuo Sakamaki, who was he was the commander of one of the many Japanese submarines that attacked Pearl Harbor. And his submarine had mechanical trouble and got swamped, and so he swam ashore and passed out, and then they found him unconscious on the beach. So that's, and he had planned, not to let himself be captured either, but he ended up being the very first prisoner of war in World War II for the Americans. During the war, there were 56 prisoners who were shot. Now, I'm talking about the whole 358,000 trying to escape. 26 died, and 21 were wounded. There were 1,350 escapes, but just about all of them were caught almost immediately. There were only 12 that got away. No, there were 18 that got away. There were 12 Germans and 6 Italians who managed to escape. But I think they were most of them were caught afterwards. Later on. There are also 5 prisoners murdered by other German prisoners during the war. Apparently in some of the camps, not here in Lake Charles, but some of the camps, they had some pretty fanatical Nazis among the prisoners who would, try to enforce, Nazi discipline on the prisoners. And there ended up being 5 of those prisoners murdered during the war, and also 2 forced suicides that they say were by Nazi methods. So I'm sure that was pretty gruesome. The United States strictly went by the Geneva Convention of 1929 in the way it treated prisoners. The Geneva Conventions required that the prisoners be paid from 80 cents to $1.20 a day for any non-war related work that they did. The prisoners couldn't be forced to do any kind of work that was directly related to war activities. They could only do kind of normal civilian type work. And the government believed that by treating them so well that the American prisoners in Germany would be treated better, than otherwise. And I from everything I've read, that doesn't seem to have worked out. I think our prisoners in Germany were treated pretty harshly. But anyway, there were 50,000 prisoners held here in Louisiana during the war, and there were only Texas and California were the only other states where more prisoners of war were held. And I think just about all the prisoners that were in Louisiana had been members of Rommel's Africa Corps and were captured in North Africa by the Americans in 1943. They were, and during this talk, I'll give you some of the personal stories of some of those veterans of the Africa Corps, and also, how they ate and lived, and it's pretty interesting. Especially their diet was amazing. But there was of course, Louisiana was and still is an agricultural state. And because of the conscription or draft, and there was a big shortage of farm labor in the state, and literally they couldn't harvest all the crops because they didn't have enough manpower. And so the government started up a program of allowing prisoners of war on a voluntary basis to work as farm laborers. So most of the prisoners in Louisiana ended up doing farm labor. And it was on a voluntary basis, and they were paid for it, which was 80 cents to $1.20 a day was considered to be the normal wage for a farm laborer at that time. So, and the prisoners, they volunteered, did it because, it was a lot better, I guess, than sitting around a prison camp and not having to do anything and just being bored all the time. They could get out and get exercise and meet people. And there was really no problems with escapes or, crime or anything like that with the prisoners. I guess the German army had regimented them so well that even as prisoners they obeyed orders and, just didn't cause any trouble, at least here, other than the isolated cases I mentioned earlier. But here in Lake Charles, it was the YMCA. I found this a little interesting, that YMCA was the one that inspected the prisoner war camps for the Geneva Convention in Louisiana, and just to make sure all the rules were being followed. And but anyway, the three main prisoner war camps were at Livingston, Ruston, and Camp Polk, which of course today is Fort Polk. And each of those housed from 4,000 to 4,500 prisoners. And then there were 50 other smaller side camps that were scattered around the state. And that's, what Lake Charles was. But anyway, these smaller camps held between 100 and 1,150 prisoners at their camps. And, just to give you a little bit of interesting information on their diet, which I found so fascinating, was that it's almost like they were trying to stuff these prisoners with food. It was, but the government itself would give them a diet that consisted of 2,000 calories, which I think that's the average adult amount. Even today, most of the ingredients lists on boxes. That's what you see, for the average diet. 2,000 calories a day is considered good. But in addition to that, the Red Cross would give them another 1,500 calories a day. And so that they ended up eating like 3,500 calories a day here. Which is more than the average American civilian would be getting, and certainly a lot more than the German army or the German civilian population. But so they were pretty satisfied from everything I can read about it. But the prisoner of war camp here in Lake Charles was, not small, but it wasn't one of the larger ones. The only figures I could find, of course the numbers would fluctuate as the harvest seasons rotated and the prisoners were moved around and so forth. But I found in October of 1943 there were 213 prisoners of war in Lake Charles, and all had been members of the Africa Corps. There was a camp built at the corner of Sallier Street and Bay Drive in Lake Charles. This is down close toward the port, and it's right by the railroad tracks. And they had they never, best I can determine, they never built barracks for them. They had some concrete slabs, and they set up tents on those slabs. And then they enclosed the camp with fencing and barbed wire and had some guard towers. And at that time, there were 60 guards, 60 American soldiers of, it was a Company B of the 793rd Military Police Battalion from Fort Polk, were the guards for the camp. And the camp commander was named Captain W.B. Nash, and he was a local man. I guess he must have either been in the Army Reserve or the military police, the National Guard, but he didn't seem to be a regular Army soldier. But anyway, Captain Nash had been a local school principal, postmaster, and had worked at McNeese. So, but now the commander of the Guard detachment from Fort Polk was Lieutenant L.W. Coulter. And also another part of Company B was stationed in Jennings, in the Jennings area. They also had a lot of, smaller detachments around there for farm labor purposes. The German prisoners in Lake Charles, besides the farm labor, also worked as gardeners at McNeese State at that time it was McNeese Junior College, and as well as on the area rice farms. They would put them on a bus each morning from the camp and then bring them over to McNeese. They would have about 40 of them there working as gardeners on the grounds. They must have had a really nicely kept up grounds on the college at that time. That seems a lot, 40 gardeners, and that's they took full advantage of it, and I'm sure it was good for McNeese. The area rice farmers had to apply to the government to get the German prisoners on to work on their farms. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to harvest all their crops. It was just as simple as that. It was, it's really something that the farmers demanded and really needed at that time. And the local prevailing wage in this area at that time for farm labor was 80 cents a day. So that's how much each prisoner was paid. But the money didn't go directly to the prisoners. The money went to the government, and the government would then issue coupons, commissary coupons to the prisoners, the equivalent money what they were owed, and then they could spend those coupons in the commissary, of their camp. And they can, buy, I guess more food and probably tobacco and whatever else they wanted. The farmers would pay the government, and anyway, the highest ranking German soldier at that time was a non-commissioned officer, and his name was Sergeant Karl Heinz Heinemann. And then just, I guess lucky for me, he was interviewed by the American press at that time. So, I was able to get a lot of good information on him and life in the prison camp and kind of the attitude of the German prisoners. But anyway, the reporter described Heinemann as a handsome, blonde, typically Nordic in appearance. Heinemann said the prisoners liked Lake Charles better than Camp Polk and appealed to the public for musical instruments. The German said his men included many musicians who could play any instrument. And this is a direct quote. "And please tell them that we German prisoners look just like Americans, not like the advertised Hein. Also, please tell them that the American prisoners in Germany get 1 day a week out of the prison camps in which they are allowed to get to the German towns to see what they're like." Now, I find that really hard to believe. I don't know. The local American Legion post gave the Germans a trumpet, and the Lake Charles Boy Scouts gave them some sheet music. And then the Germans started playing, reveille and taps and so forth, and every morning, I suppose, for both themselves and the American Guard detachment. Sergeant Heinemann was described as wearing a white-billed cap with the German insignia, which was the German eagle with the swastika beneath the German flag. He was a 10-year veteran of the German Army and could retire after 2 more years. Lieutenant Coulter said that Heinemann was very cooperative and was one of the best soldiers he had ever seen. And this is to quote Lieutenant Coulter. "He almost breaks his neck saluting the flag when it is lowered," Coulter said. The lieutenant noted that the Germans are very respectful to the American flag and considered the American soldiers the hardest fighters they had ever faced on the battlefield. Lieutenant Coulter also made an appeal to the public that they provide the American soldiers some sort of recreation. Coulter said the guards were well trained to deal with any kind of trouble, but he didn't expect any. And this is another direct quote from Coulter. "I believe we could turn them loose and they would come back, for they are very happy and feel that the people have been nice to them. Some of them don't want to return to Germany, they plan to stay here." And I've gotten other comments from other people, along those same lines. But Coulter went on to say, "They have written to their relatives that the richest man in Germany today could not buy the food they are getting." And the prisoners were practically gorged with food. And I mentioned about the 2,000 calories that the government furnished and the 1,500 that the Red Cross gave them. And their own cooks were allowed to cook the food the way they liked it. And so, of course, being Germans, they liked their pastries. And so they apparently had a great pastry cook among the Germans. And on Sundays, they also got jelly donuts. Their typical breakfast would be, they could have their choice between eggs or pancakes. In a typical Sunday dinner, they would have chicken, potatoes, rice, and other vegetables. And they all, admitted that they were being better fed and treated than they ever were in their own army. Arthur and Helen Day, who operated a local cafe, had the food concession at the camp. Now the Germans cooked their own food, and so they didn't have to do that for them, but they cooked for the 60 guards, the American guards. Mrs. Day said in a later interview after the war, "They, the prisoners, were mostly big, robust men who would go shirtless even in the middle of winter." She said the cold weather reminded them of the climate in Germany. Mrs. Day said the prisoners, also liked to swim in the lake in the winter. She said her young son was made over and treated with kindness by the Germans, some of whom had children of their own in Germany. She said the Germans were also shocked that when their homeland was being bombed and couldn't understand why Hitler would allow it. Mrs. Day said the American guards were on such good terms with the prisoners that one of the guards got in trouble for letting one of the Germans examine his rifle while he was on guard duty. The camp was fenced in, and there were watchtowers, as I mentioned. The prisoners lived in tents set up on the concrete slabs. If there were any discipline problems among the prisoners, the troublemaker would be shipped back to Camp Polk and be put in the guardhouse. And she said that many of the prisoners could speak excellent English, and she remembered one in particular who had been a teacher and had told her that he wanted to stay in the United States. Mrs. Day also said the Germans were quite an attraction for the local populace who would come out and gawk at them on Sundays. The Germans were, happy to have visitors. They would strike up conversations with them. Mrs. Day, also remembered a German mess sergeant who was an excellent pastry cook. He would send some of his pastries over to Mr. and Mrs. Day to enjoy. She didn't remember any objections from the local populace for the Germans being here. Now, there was also a local pastor, a Lutheran pastor, who was who could speak German. This was Reverend Theodore August Wegener. I'm not sure how he pronounces it. But anyway, he wrote in his church history about this experience of attending to the spiritual needs of the German prisoners. And but anyway, he wrote, "I was asked to conduct services at the local air base for German prisoners of war. On March 5th, I held the first service, I think this March 5th, 1945. Didn't say exactly though, held the first service for these men in the mess hall. Of course, the service was in German. The first Sunday I arrived there, I find most of them out playing soccer ball in a fenced-in playground. They were, at the appointed time of the service, one of the men came to find out if I had arrived. Seeing that I had, he went out and stopped the soccer game and invited all to come into the mess hall for services. About 24 came for the service. They sat on benches used for dining. The first Sunday I had no pulpit, but I brought a good supply of German hymnals, which we still had around our church. I believe it's St. John's Lutheran Church. Some of y'all familiar with it? Yeah, they were, I think there were a lot of Germans that immigrated to Lake Charles in the mid-19th century to work at Captain Goss's shipyard. And that was, he got a lot of great skilled shipbuilders to come to Lake Charles. And, that was one of the big industries here for many, many decades. But, that's why they had a German congregation in Lake Charles, even up to, I guess, World War II. I'm not sure. By then, I would assume that not many of the local people were probably still speaking German. But anyway, this, Pastor Wagner knew how to speak German, so that worked out well. There was a small reed organ which one of the POWs played. They sang German hymns with gusto. After the service, I was taken to the bakery and enjoyed good German-made coffee cake and coffee. Well, that must have been quite a treat, those pastries. The next Sunday, we not only had a pulpit, but also an altar with about 30 in attendance. After holding services in the mess hall several months, the officials at the air base decided to use the base chapel. Here we had more conveniences and attendance increased to about 60. It was a most interesting experience for me, and I thank God that I could serve these men in the language of their country. Then another interesting bit of information I came across in 1989, one of these prisoners that had been held in Lake Charles came back, as a tourist just to visit the old site of, of where he lived. And as a prisoner, and he had some very interesting things to say about the POW camp and also how he got here. I thought that was particularly interesting. His journey from the battlefield all the way to Lake Charles. But anyway, his name, I think, like I say, I'm not a German speaker, so I may not have this right, but I think it's pronounced Georg. It looks like it would be pronounced George in English. And the last name is Will, W-I-L-L, but I think in German that would probably be pronounced Will. I believe they spell or pronounce W's as a V. But anyway, he was from Wiesmain, Germany, which is a town near Bamberg in Bavaria. In a local newspaper interview, Will said that his life as a prisoner began in 1943 when he was captured in North Africa by Americans. He said he was serving with the Air Defense Forces under General Rommel. By the way, General Rommel, I think he was, he was a professional soldier, and I don't think he was ever I'm sure he, had to kind of be tied in with the Nazis, but he seems to have been somebody that the Allied generals had some respect for. Possibly he wasn't quite as brutal as some of the other German generals. But anyway, Mr. Ville said that he was from North Africa. He was taken to Glasgow, Scotland, and then to New York on the English liner Queen Mary. After being processed in New York, he was put on a train for a 3-day ride to Camp Polk, where he stayed for 2 years. At Camp Polk, Ville worked in the mess hall, played football, attended concerts and theatrical performances that were put on by German prisoners. And also, there was a famous American actor who was, in the Army at that time, I guess, entertaining troops, and his name was George Montgomery. Any of y'all remember him? Anyway, he was, I guess, arranged the entertainment there for the, I'm sure the American troops as well as the Germans. But anyway, they put on such great theatrical entertainments that, a lot of they said some very famous American generals also like to come and watch them. And also at Camp Polk, Mr. Ville said that even though they weren't supposed to have liquor, and the government didn't give them liquor, it said they would make their own in their tents. He said they would turn wine, or they would collect orange juice, and then somehow they would put that in a glass container under the floor of their tents, and that they ran an electric light wire and a bulb to that glass jar, and somehow they turned that into wine. I don't know how you do it, but anyway, they even enjoyed their, I guess, wine while they were prisoners. In Lake Charles, Ville said he helped distribute food to small outlying prison camps in this part of the state, most of which had prisoners helping farmers. He said the prisoners were treated well and always ate very well, and even better on Sundays. And I get this, every single thing I read about them is how well they ate. I mean, it's just amazing. Maybe they needed to put them on a diets while they were here. Let's see, and in fact, he said he grew to like jelly donuts so much that he and his daughter's family still, eat jelly donuts to that day, back in 1989 when they were visiting. And anyway, Ville said that he was finally freed May 9th, 1946 in New Orleans. And one other thing he said that at the end of the war, they did cut their rations finally. And but he said even though they cut back on their food, that it was, still a very adequate diet. He didn't have any complaints about it at all.
What year was he freed?
He was freed May the 9th, 1946 in New Orleans. And anyway, then he was sent back to Germany by way of New Jersey and then France. So that's basically the story of the prisoner of war camp in Lake Charles. There was nothing, I can't find anything negative about it. Prisoners enjoyed their time here. The local populace enjoyed having them. The farmers needed them desperately, and so they served, even though that wasn't directly war related, that must have helped the war effort to harvest those crops, because I imagine a lot of that rice those farmers were harvesting was probably going straight to the troops. And so, it worked out well, and possibly it also helped some of the prisoners change their attitudes about Nazism, and, and getting to see the American way of life and how Americans live and how generous they were, and, and forgiving, really. I guess you had to be pretty forgiving, because just think of it, a lot of our boys were over there getting killed and tortured and, suffering horrible fates, at the very time these men were being, had their soccer and their swimming in the lake and their, and being gorged with food. So, I feel like that must have had it in it, from all the reminiscences I can come across, it did have a good positive effect on them. And, so, hopefully they brought those good experiences and those attitudes and the American way of life back to Germany, maybe help improve their own country after the war. But anyway, to sum it up, the program of allowing prisoners of wars to work as farm labor was such a success that it saved $80 million for the government. I'm not sure, it doesn't explain how the government saved money that way, but anyway, also there were $22 million was paid to the government by farmers and contractors who hired the prisoners. So that's basically my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
I was wondering if perhaps the amount of calories they were giving them was based on they were doing physical labor in the fields, and maybe they burned those calories off more than if they were just sitting in the camp.
Yeah, no doubt. That is farm labor. That's hard physical labor.
Because the local population, they had ration books. They couldn't, they were rationing sugar and everything, and it sounds like the prisoners of war were getting things that the population wasn't.
Yeah.
Sugar for their pastries.
Yeah.
Jelly.
There's a lot of things on rationing that they decide who gets and who don't. For example, meat was rationed. I was a student at LSU, and Mike the Tiger got all the meat he wanted. One other thing about the prisoners, I might have missed it because I'm hard of hearing now. Negative, it seems like they overlooked telling the Germans the war had ended until the clocks were in.
Huh. No, I never heard that. That's, this one that I mentioned, he didn't get released till 1946. I don't know why they would have been holding him so long, but after the war. But maybe that was the reason why. They had to wait till the American soldiers got back and were in their civilian lives again, and so that could very well have been a good reason. So, anything else?
When they were released, were they given the opportunity to stay in the United States if they wanted to?
I don't know. It doesn't say
No.
the information I had.
We had, on the farm, we had, 25, sometimes 30 of them. And there was one that was a French German, and he's communicated back after the war. And he wanted to stay, but they wouldn't let none of them stay. They had to all go back and then come back as visitors or
Probably the
citizens or
immigration
whatever.
department.
Yeah, and, but we had a prison camp there at Bell City, and we hauled the prisoners from there. We hauled, I had 20, 25 every day. Haul them out there to the field, and they brought their own food. I guess, Mom wanted to give them, some food, but no, they wouldn't let them. They had to eat their own food.
Did they seem, did they look well fed? I guess they weren't.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
They were
Yeah.
brawny people. They were strong, and they learned real easy. Teach them to shop rocks, for an example. And they learned real good. And one of them one night escaped the camp there. He headed out in the swamp. Well, it was on the edge of the swamp anyhow. And the next evening, here he come dragging back. Mosquitoes had bit him. He was red all over. He was glad to come back. He came back and went out to work.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I think they were pretty amazed at those mosquitoes. I came across a story about how one of the Germans captured a mosquito some way and showed it to the other prisoners, and they were just all amazed. And I hadn't seen something like that. It's probably a moth or something, but they.
I attended one of the SAGE programs at McNeese, and it was about the sale of Louisiana. It got sold for so little, and the reason it got sold for so little was they thought it was because the mosquitoes, Louisiana was inhabitable. So that's why they sold it for so little. They thought mosquitoes would eat everybody up.
Yeah, the French really had a bad time down in Santo Domingo. The part of it became Haiti, and the other part Dominican Republic. But they had that rebellion down there, and they sent a big French army to to quell the rebellion, and that army was decimated by malaria, and they had to leave and let the rebels have it, and so. That's when a lot of those, people from that area moved to Louisiana.
We found that they were smart people. Even the prisoners, they were real smart. You could teach them something, and the next day, you didn't have to teach them again.
Yeah, what were they wearing? Were they still wearing their German uniforms or
Oh, no.
just
Well,
American?
it was some clothing, I guess, that the Army had gave them, and, but there wasn't any stripes or anything like that on them. And
Yeah,
they were real smart people, of course, all those people that came down here.
Well, the ones that went to Bell City, were they from the Lake Charles camp here?
No,
No?
no, we had a camp there at Bell City.
And it was their own?
Oh, yeah.
Separate?
Yeah, they had,
so Company B had a detachment there in the Jennings area.
they probably had 300 or 400, 200 or 300 there at Bell City.
At Bell City itself, not Jennings?
No, it was a camp
Wow.
right on the side just outside of the city limits there.
And they lived in tents also?
Yeah. Sorry?
They lived in tents there also?
No, they had some barracks that I believe came from somewhere else. And they brought some barracks there and they had them on concrete slabs. And I really don't remember where the camps, I mean, the housing came from, but it was buildings.
Yeah, I was surprised that I couldn't find anything about barracks being built in the one on Salle because it was.
They came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had some tents there too. I guess maybe they could sleep in a tent if they wanted to or whatever.
Do you remember if they had guard towers and,
And what?
did they have guard towers and all that?
Yes, oh yeah. Well, they had a guard, it was, and they had one 24-hour tower, guard tower. And, but that one that escaped, he was glad to come back that day.
Yeah, I bet. I couldn't imagine where he thought he was going.
He couldn't imagine all them
Go to the
mosquitoes out
Gulf and
there.
start swimming.
Yeah.
But they were good workers. Once you taught them something, the next day you didn't have to teach them again.
Yeah, it sounds like the government really tried to separate out the fanatical Nazis and not let them, in details like this. And, I noticed they had the highest ranking soldier was a sergeant, so they probably tried to keep the officers separated too, I would imagine.
We had one guard, American soldier, but he was kind of oldly, not old, but probably about 40 years old. That's not old. Maybe more. But anyhow, he was the guard there for us. And the man that was taking care of the thrashing machine, he had to open the back end of it and he had to get in there. And so one of the prisoners was just sitting on that tractor up there, just piddling around, waiting until they got the thing repaired. And he pulled the clutch a little bit, and that machine turned a little bit. That guard almost killed him right there. That prisoner just got on his knees and just begging him not to kill him. But and Dad stopped him, and nobody had gotten hurt, so.
Yeah.
But it was just one of the incidents.
What is your name, sir?
Sorry?
What is your name?
Howard Cormier.
Oh, thank you for sharing your memories. That's really adds a lot to it.
It does. Where exactly in Bell City, if I'm a little bit familiar with Bell City, but where were the barracks in Bell City?
Ma'am?
Where in Bell City actually were the barracks?
You know the road coming from Bell City to Hayes?
Yes, sir.
Well, when you're coming from Hayes into Bell City, you just go straight.
Right.
Instead of turning into town, you go straight, and it was about 2 blocks, probably 2 city blocks on the right-hand side.
Okay, so
Right now,
Is that the Schultz's lived kind of?
well, no, it was way before that place.
That's the area.
Yeah, but right, instead of turning into Bell City,
City.
you just go straight.
Yeah.
It's about 3 blocks.
Okay, that's right by where.
It was on the right-hand
You know where
side.
Pat and Carol Nunez live?
Ma'am?
You know Pat and Carol Nunez?
Yeah,
A. Derwin, is it right around that A. Derwin
it
road?
was in that general area.
Wow.
Yeah, it was in that general area. And the last time I passed there, there wasn't nothing that you could recognize
Yeah.
as the past thing, because it, trees and shrub and
Right.
everything else.
Mr.
But I think-
Claudette, do they have any, does anyone around Bell City have any of the pictures?
Probably so.
That would be interesting for mine.
Yeah, probably so.
Presentation.
I can't think of anybody,
Who's left?
yeah.
They didn't have cameras then either, you know, private citizens didn't have cameras like they do.
Mom had a bunch of pictures, because there was, one of the prisoners was a Frenchman that was German. And he communicated with us, I don't know,
Cajun
a
stuff.
couple of years after he went back. He kept saying that he wanted to come back. But I think he was hinting for us to, or somebody, to say, okay, Joe Blow, I want him back. Or, you know,
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
like that.
sponsor.
But we communicated with that one guy. Mom communicated with him a year or so. But
Yeah. It's neat if you
they were all pretty smart
Yeah,
people.
if you still have those letters, the archives would probably be interested in them.
I'd have to dig.
Another trip to the attic.
Another trip but I look around, I think we had taken some pictures of the prison camp. Because that was my job. I was only 12 years old, but that was my job every morning and every evening, to go pick them up and bring them back. But I can't remember pictures, you know, of anything, but I'll look around.
Anybody else?
Mike, are there any pictures of the camp on site?
No, not during the war, and there's really nothing. I've been out there before, and it's just, you know, kind of an overgrown field now. It's, you know, if you dig around, you can find traces of the old slabs, concrete slabs, but, you know, maybe somebody with a metal detector or something could find some interesting artifacts out there. But no, there's really nothing to see.
Do you know who owns that property now? Is that part of port property, or do you know?
I don't know. It's pretty close to the railroad tracks too. You know, I don't know who owns it.
Close to the port then. I'm not familiar with where Bay Street is.
Yeah, there's some houses just right across from it. You know, it's you know, there's some houses built around it.
Do you give other topics at these meetings?
I can. Kind of my specialty is the war between the states, and you know, so I, you know, have a lot of information about that, and you know, in fact, I'm writing a book that I hope to get published pretty soon. You know, about that war.
I think it'd be interesting if you have, you know, can have more presentations. I imagine they
Well,
would thank you.
yeah, I enjoy doing it.
Mike, one reason, he said that his family communicated with one of the prisoners after the war. A friend of my parents, my dad was stationed in Opelika when I was born at the German POW camp there. And a friend of theirs, I think the last name was Thompson. Anyway, she communicated with one of the prisoners after the war as well. And the reason she never would step forward, you know, tell them that she would sponsor them, that that's what they were looking for, a sponsor to come back, is because of the feeling throughout the country at that time towards Germans. You had too many families
Yeah.
that had lost sons and husbands and brothers at German hands. And our prisoners that came home from German prisoner camps were in awful shape. We had a friend of our family that was not, he was in the Japanese, prison of Japanese, and it just breaks my heart when I even think about him and how they used him as slave labor in the Mitsubishi mines in Japan. But that was the reason probably why his mother did not agree to sponsor this person. She may have liked this person, this individual, and would have got along fine with him had he come back. But the feeling throughout this country was nobody would have wanted a German at that to live next to him. I mean, that was the feeling throughout the country at the time. Mother said that, you know, her friend would have liked to have sponsored him to come back and bring his wife.
Well, Mom and Dad had signed some papers for this one guy, this French-German, for him to come back. He wanted to come back. But I don't know what happened to him. I was 12, 14 years old, and I didn't really care whether he came back or not. So anyhow, they had signed some papers.
Yeah.
He had asked them to, and they had, but...
Well, it could be that he got back home and fit back in with
Yeah,
home.
that's right.
Yeah.
And, you know, he wasn't going to be able to come back and eat like he did.
His name was French.
His name was French, yes. He didn't have a, I can't remember the name,
He was.
and I don't know where
probably
all of
French
that
name.
stuff came from, you know.
It was a German name.
He, I don't know, I think he had a French name, but I don't know.
Did he speak French?
Oh, yeah.
Family?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, you know, the Cajun French
Yeah.
and their French is a little bit of difference, but then
They could
you
understand.
can communicate,
Yeah.
so.
All right, thank you very much for having me.